Al, thanks for being on the show with us tonight, man. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely,
It's our pleasure.
absolutely. I don't know where to begin with you, man. You've had a lot going on in your life with cryptids and UFOs and all kinds of other stuff. They say they call you the Squat's father. Is that
Yeah,
right?
that's one of my nicknames. Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
how did you come across that?
Good friend of mine, Chris Reinhardt, from Discover Sasquatch. He researches out of Connecticut, Berkshire Mountains. He has a show on Doug Hycheck's network, and he invited me on, and he nicknamed me the Squatch Father, and that was it. It just stuck.
Okay, gotcha. Cool.
All
Well, you've
right.
got an extensive background, like we said. Your mother was a psychic. Your brother is one of the first
Psychologist.
psychologists, first parapsychologist in the U.S.
Nice.
Uh, Tell us about that a little bit, real quick.
Yeah, well, back in the 70s, you could only get a degree in parapsychologist in England. And some university, I don't remember which one it was, out in California, decided to do it here as well. And soon as the class was available, my brother flew out to California to get his degree in parapsychology.
All right, gotcha. Well, you're also an investigator, experiencer, researcher, cryptozoologist, UFOologist. You just start from where you want to take us from, man. Just where this all began
Start at the
and
beginning.
what
Go from
happened to you,
one.
what you saw.
The beginning.
Just go with it.
um, my like I said, my mom was a psychic, and she would talk all night long in her sleep. People would come to her and talk to her all night long. When my grandmother passed away, I got her room, and I slept in her bed with her pillow and her blankets, the whole 9 yards. And I was 5 years old, and the funeral parlor was across the street from our building where we lived. And for the first week, my grandmother would come to me and tuck me in every night, and I would tell my mother about it. She understood, and she said, "Don't tell your father because your father doesn't believe in any of this stuff." Even though my father had a ghost run through the engine block of his Mustang while he was fishing one night out in Long Island, he still never believes in ghosts. But I kept it to myself. And I mean, I knew my grandmother was across the street. We went back then. I used to do wakes for like 3 days in a row, and we were there every single day, day and night, twice a day. I knew she was there, but yet she would come to me at night when it was time to tuck me in, and that was at 5. And then first UFO sighting at 10, first Bigfoot sighting at 12. My family. My aunt was a white witch. I had a cousin who was a white witch as well, and one who was a black witch. And my relatives would do seances on the weekends. I come from a big Italian family. We were very close. Everybody lived in the same neighborhood. And so we spent a lot of time sleeping over all of my cousins' houses. And they would put us to bed, and then me and my cousin, whether it was my cousin Anthony or my cousin Dino, we would creep out and sneak out and shimmy along the floor like belly crawl like army guys, while they were doing. They never used Ouija boards, but they did use tarot cards, and they did do seances with crystals and stuff like that. And I remember, God, I had to be about 8 years old. Me and my cousin Anthony had snuck out one time, and they were doing something with a candelabra, and the flames were just dancing, going crazy. They would start off as an inch high and then go like a foot high and then come down. And I guess they were asking all kinds of questions, and they were getting answers to it, and that's just, I didn't know that the paranormal was I didn't know that my life was unnormal. I thought the paranormal was normal. In my family, it was not till I got older and started talking about it with my friends in the neighborhood that people, look at you sideways and say, nah, there's something wrong with you guys, but we didn't think so.
Right on. Well, cool. Why don't you tell us about your I don't know, I guess your most terrifying or your scariest or your best encounter, whether it be paranormal or Bigfoot or whatever. What's really stuck with you over the years that you've gotten into?
Well, everything kind of, when you experience that kind of trauma, um, everything kind of stays with you. When I was a kid, down in South Florida, I had my first Bigfoot experience, which was not uh, kumbaya kind of thing. You know what I mean? It was very, very um, blood curdling. It was. Do you want me to go into it? I'll go into it. Okay. So 12 years old. I was 12. My cousin Anthony was 15. We both get shipped down to Florida every year. It was our summer camp. My brother-in-law owned a restaurant in a little town called Davie. They had a house on the outskirts, um, right on the outskirts of the Everglades, on the outskirts of the town. He had an Italian restaurant in there, and so we would do stuff. We would work. Me and my cousin would work around the house in the morning. Whether it's cutting grass, painting, doing all kinds of stuff, popcorning ceilings. We did everything, and in the afternoon, we'd ride our dirt bikes in the swamp or take the guns out shooting or go horseback riding. It was really a great place to spend the summer and have a lot of fun. My sister had a huge pool in the backyard, and we would go down every year. So we knew a lot of the kids in the neighborhood. And one summer, we were hanging out, me and my cousin Anthony. We were up late, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. And my sister's house, the way she had it set up was 3/4 of the house was surrounded by a 6-foot fence, except for the front. The front was open. They had a circular driveway with a fountain in the middle. And she had two canine German Shepherd big dogs. And so one night we were up and something walked by the house and the dogs went crazy. And I threw the dogs in the garage because it was late. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I didn't want him to wake the house up. Was my brother-in-law was an ex-Marine, and he didn't play any games. You know what I mean? When he wanted to sleep, he wanted to sleep. And so we drove the dogs in the garage, and we got a really, really nasty smell came into the house. It was unbearable, the smell. We didn't know what it was. So the next morning we told us at breakfast, we were talking to my sister, my brother-in-law Joe, and we were telling him, something came by the house late last night and stunk to high heaven, and the dogs were nuts. I had to throw them in the garage. And he goes, oh, it was probably the skunk ape. I mean, my cousin Anthony just looked at it. She was like, yeah, skunk ape, we thought he was pulling our chain, and my sister goes, no, down here in Florida, Bigfoot is called the skunk ape because he smells so bad. He lives in the swamps. And we're like, everybody knows Bigfoot. So he's out in the Pacific Northwest, no there's no Bigfoots in Florida. And so then we went out in the neighborhood and we started talking to all the local guys. And they were like, yeah, when it's hot like this, and that particular summer, it was really hot. There was a drought. There was fires in the Everglades. And all of the animals were coming inland. I mean, the dogs one night, we were walking the dogs in the swamp where we had our bonfires and jumped our bikes, and the dogs treed a cougar one night. You know what I mean? So all the animals were coming inland. And so the guys who lived down there was like it was no big deal. Yeah, it happens when it's hot like this. The skunk ape comes around. So we're like, okay. And then right after we validated with the dudes from the neighborhood, we started seeing all this stuff on TV. News reporters interviewing people that seen the skunk ape, and on the radio and in the newspapers, and it was all over the place. I'm like, holy crap, this thing is real, And then we were hanging out again one night. Me and my cousin Anthony were hanging out. It was late. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning, and my sister had like a sunroom with a queen size pull-out couch bed with a big picture window. It had to be 4 feet high and 8 feet wide, and it was huge. And me and my cousin Anthony had just laid down in bed 2 o'clock in the morning, and we seen a shadow go across the front, the wall in front of us. The sensor lights went on in the driveway. We seen the shadow, and the dogs went crazy. And I jumped up and I grabbed the dogs. I put them in the garage, and I walked over to the window. I kind of belly crawled over to the window because we seen this giant shadow. We didn't know what the hell it was. And I pulled open the curtain and just like a one eye peeked out. And there was this 9 foot, 1,000 pound King Kong looking creature. And it was looking, it must have seen itself in the picture window. I thought, of course, at the time, I thought it was looking at me, and it must have seen itself, and it did this like incredible Hulk kind of scream and flexed its muscles, and it was just massive. And when it screamed, I thought the window was going to come down, you know. It went right through the window, right through me. My cousin Anthony just was paralyzed on the bed. And then it started to walk along the side of the house. On one side of the house where was an empty lot. There was still a lot of empty lots in the development. The development was called Sunshine Acres, and it was still a lot of empty lots, especially in the back of the development. The front of the development was pretty much built up, and it walked along the side of the house. I dragged my cousin Anthony out of the bed, and I said, "Come on, man, let's go in the bathroom between the kids' rooms and let's check this thing out," because it had to walk right by that bathroom window. And I knew there was a sensor light on that corner of the house, and the light would go on, you know. And as it was walking past the fence line and the sensor light on, we were watching it, and we were in a bathroom with the lights off, a tinted screen and a tinted window, and this thing was looking at us like it could see us, you know. And we would duck down below the window line and pop up and duck down, and every time we turned around it was look at us. And at one point it reached down and grabbed the wild watermelon. It took a bite, and it was just like 2 nubs left, dropped the nubs and walked towards the back of the property. So again, I grabbed my cousin Anthony. I said, come on, let's go out into the patio. And we went out into the patio because, again, I knew once it passed that corner of the house, the lights would go on again. And I couldn't believe it. Like I tell people all the time, when you see these things up close and personal, your brain cannot comprehend what your eyes are seeing. You just can't. They're just too big. They're too massive. They're too everything. You like, when people ask me what I seen, I said, I seen a monster. That's what it looked like. Monsters aren't supposed to exist. Well, this thing looked like a monster. And the way I got the height was, it was head and shoulders above the fence line. And I knew that fence line was 6 foot high to keep the dogs in. And it was head and shoulders above the fence line. And it walked towards the back of the property, and the house behind ours had a man-made lake. And it squatted down and it sipped some water out of the man-made lake. And then it walked off on a 45-degree angle to the woods, to the swamp, where we rode our bikes and everything. And it just went off in the swamp. And we were just like, I mean, we didn't sleep that night. You know what I mean? I don't think I slept the rest of the time I was down in Florida, to be honest, especially once that happened. I wasn't sleeping up against that window anymore. I was sleeping in the living room on the couch, and my cousin Anthony was sleeping on the floor. Neither one of us wanted to sit near that window, you know. And that was like the first time we laid eyes on it, and it was just terrifying. And when it screamed, like its eyes were red, but I don't know if that had to do with the sensor lights in it, you know. It had canines. It was black, but it had red tint in its hair, you know, like red tint. It was massive. And the next morning we told my brother-in-law what happened, and he went out, and we found the trackway along the side of the fence in the sand, and the footprints were like 18 inches by like 9 inches. They were massive, and my brother-in-law was like, he wanted to cast them, because he wanted to put 2 on the bar at the house and 2 at the bar at the restaurant, you know, for conversation. But that afternoon, the cattle rancher down the street would do tour, not cattle rancher, horse rancher would do tours, and he always rode by that empty lot where our house was, and he ran over all the footprints, so we never were able to cast any of them. And we worked for the cattle rancher, I mean the horse rancher, because his son was one of our friends. Because when my sister first built her first home in Sunshine Acres, which we called the greenhouse, it was right across the street from the horse rancher. Then she moved to the bigger house, which was the blue house that had the pool towards the back of the property. So we knew the horse rancher's son. We would work in the stables, shoveling shit to make money for beer and stuff like that. We would take tours out in the swamp. The horses knew where they were going anyway, so we just had to make sure no one fell into the canal, and anything to make a few dollars, you know. And so then that happened, and we just couldn't believe it, just absolutely couldn't believe it. And a couple of nights went by, and my brother-in-law, when he would come home from the restaurant, especially on the weekends, he would bring home all the burnt pizzas that the cooks, and we would eat them as like a midnight snack. You know what I mean? Being from New York, we like our pizza well done anyway. So he would come home, and we were sitting in the patio one night. It was like 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, 12:30, and we're having pizza, and he's asking, any action tonight, anything. I was like, no action, pretty quiet tonight. And then no sooner did we say that, we start hearing like a 30-30 going off. Boom, 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 boom. So we all run to the front of the house, because the one thing about Florida, it's so damn flat you can see for miles. And we run to the front of the house, and we see the muzzle flashes coming from the horse rancher's property. So my brother says, jump on your dirt bikes, go over, see what's going on. So we jump on our dirt bikes, and we just rode across all the neighbors' lawns and everything. So we couldn't get there fast enough. And we got there, and we seen our friend, and we asked him what was going on. And he was telling us that his father had just brought in a wild horse. I don't know if it was a Mustang or a stallion or whatever it was, but from like Wyoming or Montana. And he had it in the corral. And he had a Seminole Indian coming every day to work the horse. He couldn't put it in the stalls because they kicked it. It made all the other horses nervous. So he left it in the corral. Well, this creature came out of the swamp, because his property went right up to the swamp, came out of the swamp and snuck up on the back of this horse and grabbed it from its hind quarters. I don't know what it was going to do to the horse, but it grabbed it by its hind quarters. And apparently the horse must have kicked out, jumped the corral, ran into the pasture. At that point, the rancher came out, seen the creature, and opened fire on it. You got to understand, this is 1974. This town, Davie, is a cowboy town. Biggest thing that happened there was a rodeo on the 4th of July. Everybody had guns in the back of their pickup trucks. We took our guns out, went shooting in the woods every single day. It was just something you did back then, especially down south. And so the following day we go back. We go back down the following day to talk to our friend, and the sheriff is there, and the Native American rides out to the pasture to get the horse. He brings the horse back to the corral, and the horse has got handprints on its hindquarters, not claw marks, handprints. It was the craziest thing. And the rancher was going nuts, screaming at the sheriff about his horse being ruined and everything. And the sheriff's like, okay, we'll pick up the patrols around here, because you guys are on the outskirts, and we're surrounded by canals all around us. There was a 1-lane bridge getting in and 1-lane bridge getting out, and we were surrounded by canals all around us. And so that happened. So then a couple of weeks go by. It's been pretty quiet, a week or two. Still getting reports from all over South Florida for skunk apes, from state troopers and county troopers and local police. And you know, peeping Tom things, and the local police would go thinking there's a peeping Tom looking in someone's window, and it was a 7-foot skunk ape. You know, they hit them with the flashlight, and they would run and jump into the canal and swim away. And so one night, my sister and my brother-in-law had friends flying in from New York. They were going down to Miami for dinner and dancing, you know. And they were like, "Listen, you guys know where the guns are. Keep the dogs in the house. Take care of the kids. We'll be home. You know, we'll be home later tonight." No problem. Wasn't a big deal for us. So they get home around 2 o'clock in the morning. They're, you know, 1:30, 2 o'clock. I don't remember exact time. And my brother-in-law just bought a brand new Lincoln Continental, and they pull into the driveway, and the dogs go crazy, and you know, everybody goes out to meet them because the dogs want to go out to meet them. So everybody goes out to meet them, and we're all standing around in the driveway talking. And my brother-in-law says, "Any action tonight?" And it's like, we're like, "Nope, pretty quiet." Again, no sooner than we say, "Nope, pretty quiet," we hear a blood-curdling scream come from the cattle rancher who lives right up the street from us. And this guy was not a fan of ours, because when we came out of our street on our dirt bikes to make the turn on the gravel road, we'd always have to go up on his grass. And we used to tear up his grass every single day. And my brother-in-law was always putting new sod down for this guy, because we just couldn't take that turn slow. We had to take it at 100 miles an hour, you know. And so he wasn't a big fan of ours. And we hear this scream. And my brother, "Let's jump in the car. Let's go see what happened." No sooner we hear this blood curdling scream, and I mean, it sent shivers down your spine. My sister grabbed both of the dogs and ran in the house and locked the door. And then we seen a double barrel shotgun go off. Boom, both barrels at once. So my brother says, "Come on, jump in the car. Let's go see what happened." So my cousin Anthony got in the front seat. I jumped in the back. I asked my brother-in-law to open up the sunroof. I'm hanging out of the sunroof. We're racing down the road, and just as we get to our corner, the deputy is going by, and he's going like 2 miles an hour. And we're stuck behind the deputy's car, and we can see another car at the far end of the development. And you know, we just assume it's the sheriff, because again, this is a little town. It's like Mayberry. There's just 2 cops in it, you know. And so we're stuck behind the deputy. He's got his spotlight looking to the left, because that's where the swamp was. And everybody's looking left. And the creature runs out of the darkness from the right, and he hits it with his police car. And when he hits this creature with his police car, the car stops dead like he hit a telephone pole. And the creature stumbles back and takes down a school crossing sign that's supposed to be unbendable up to like 200-mile-an-hour hurricane winds. Well, this creature flattened this sign, just bent it in half. And, you know, we're standing there behind the police car, maybe 5 feet behind the police car, when the creature gets back up and he starts to limp across the road. So my brother-in-law hits it with the high beams to get a better look at it. I'm hanging out of the sunroof. This is like time is slowed down. It's moving. It's like 2 miles an hour. It's like ridiculous. And I'm sitting there watching it, and you can see the shadow of the cop holding onto the steering wheel, his silhouette, the deputy's silhouette. And the creature walks up to the car, limps up to the car, and with both fists, he does a hammer punch right on the front of the car, and he screams at the deputy. And the car comes off the ground on the back, and we're like, holy crap, you know, this thing is pissed. And it just limps off into the swamp, and it goes into the swamp. At that point, the sheriff has turned the corner. He can see the deputy's car all smashed up in the middle of the road. He puts his lights, he comes down, he takes our statement, what happened, he takes the deputy's statement, and he's like, "Why didn't you shoot it?" You know, back then, the shotgun was in between the driver and the passenger on the front seat, not like today in the trunk. And he said, "Why didn't you take the shotgun and shoot it?" And the deputy just said, "No, the shotgun wasn't big enough, you know." And so he's taking the deputy's report. When the cattle rancher comes driving up in his pickup truck. He sees all the lights flashing. He comes up to the sheriff and he says, "You got to come back to my house and see what this goddamn skunk ape did to my prize bull." This guy had a white Brahma bull in his yard, and this bull was the size of a minivan. It had a hump in its back, and if it weighed 2,000 pounds, it weighed an ounce. You know what I mean? It was just the biggest, meanest thing you've ever seen. He didn't like people walking past the fence line. He would snort at you. I jogged that every single day, and he was not happy when I would run by. And so we jump in our car. Well, we're still in our car, and the cattle rancher tells the sheriff, "Come with me." So the sheriff takes off with the cattle rancher. We go around the deputy, and we go with them too, because that's where we were headed to begin in the beginning when we heard the scream and we seen the shotgun go off to the cattle rancher's house. We get there, and the sheriff is panning the pasture, and there in the middle of the pasture is this white Brahma bull bleeding out with no head. And we're just sitting there looking at this, and the Brahma bull was a monster to begin with. You know what I mean? And then he pans the pasture like another 100 yards to the south, and there's the head. Like, this creature just ripped his bull's head off and threw it out of the way. And there may have been calves in the pasture. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. Maybe the creature was in the pasture going after a calf, and the Brahma bull said, "Not on my watch." You know what I mean? But at that point, he was going absolutely nuts, the cattle rancher, because God only knows how much he paid for that Brahma bull. And they brought in helicopters, and they brought in dogs, and they brought in horses, and they searched the swamp all night and all the next day, and they never found any sign of the creature whatsoever. And I mean, that was just, when I came back to New York, my bedroom my father was a carpenter, and he had enclosed an outside porch, and he made it a room. And the only windows he had in his carpenter shop was a big front window. So my bedroom was like the size of a prison cell with a big window in it. And I couldn't sleep far enough away from that window because I thought this creature was going to come to New York and reach through that window and grab me, And we would go out and hang. Like, we spent a lot of time in the woods, shooting BB guns and stuff like that here in New York, and having BB gun wars. And I'll tell you, man, as soon as the sun started to go down, I got out of those woods as fast as I could. I was definitely messed up for a couple of years, like 2 or 3 years after that, but I mean, it's all good now, but that was pretty crazy stuff.
Al, what part of New York are you from?
Well, originally I'm from Yonkers, New York.
Okay.
Just north of the Bronx border. And I mean, right on the Bronx border. We were literally right on the Bronx border. I'm living upstate now in the mid-Hudson Valley, New York. About, I would say, maybe 60 miles north of Yonkers now, But
So when you saw that skunk ape for the first time, how old did you say you were?
12.
Yeah. How close do you think you were to that thing when you guys experienced that?
The fountain, it was standing adjacent to the fountain, and the fountain had to be, I would say, good 20 feet away from the front window.
Wow.
It was probably closer when we were in the kids' bathroom looking out to the fence line, because the property on that side of the house was a little bit more narrower, maybe 15 feet in the kids' bathroom looking out at it. We were probably closer there, but I mean, when you seen it out in the driveway, it was just so big. It was just so massive. It had to be 4 feet wide and 3 feet thick, and it was just a beast.
You said it had canine type teeth too, right?
Yeah, it's when it screamed, you could see its canine teeth. Yeah.
So who all did you guys tell about this after you saw it?
Well, actually, because we had seen so many reports of it that summer, we thought that we were going to have a ton of news people come to our house and ask questions because we were witnesses to everything, you know. And for some reason, no one ever came to our house. No one ever talked to us about it. It was like it never happened. Um, not too long ago, I had posted on the Skunk Ape Museum page my story, and a woman from the BFRO, her name was Ree. She was the head of the BFRO in Florida, and she read it, and she called me and she said, you know, I was the same age as you in 1974. And I remember my father had a mechanic shop in Davie. And I remember my father talking about everybody coming into his mechanic shop, talking about the skunk ape being seen all around, you know, Davie and everything. And turned out that her uncle was a police officer in the next town to the south of us. I think it was called Cooper City, and he had a whole book of what they thought were peeping tom reports. You know, again, you have to understand 1974, an old white lady's called the sheriff saying there's a 7-foot black guy looking in my window. The sheriff is getting out there as fast as he can. um, Cooper City was a little bit bigger than Davie. It had more cops. You know, it was more like a real little city. Davie was a tiny little town, and her uncle had a book. He had 2 books, the official report and the unofficial report. And he promised her that when he would retire, he was going to give her the unofficial report. And she would write a book on all his unofficial reports. But what she did is when she wrote my story up and put it on a BFRO page, what she did at the end of my story was she incorporated all the headlines and all the news feeds from all the newspapers in South Florida that summer regarding the skunk ape. And she put like a ton of stuff in there, man. I mean, just a ton of, and she took a picture of she Google Earth Sunshine Acres, and of course it's all developed now. There's not even swamp there anymore. But she Googled Sunshine Acres, and she put down where the horse rancher lived, where we lived, where the cattle rancher lived, where the woods that we went riding our dirt bikes. And she did everything. She went above and beyond the call of duty on my report, and it was just amazing what she did for me. It was just amazing. And then she hooked me up with Sevilla Irwin, who was an artist, and she did an artist rendering of the creature I seen, and they put that on the page as well. Yeah.
Did you happen to be on Sibylla's show and do that episode as well?
No, no, I've never been on Sibylla's show. No.
Okay. A lot of times she'll do the encounter as people are talking about it and show the pictures as she's drawing it, like we're doing right now, but then she'll integrate the pictures of it. But
No, no.
I'd like to see those pictures. Where did you say we can see those at?
It's just one photo. She was supposed to do 2 for me, a black and white and then a color because it had the red tint in its hair.
Mm-hmm.
She only did the black and white though. But at the time she was living in Texas, and we were doing everything over the phone. Did it look like this? Did it do, you know, like via Skype or something like that, you know? And did it look like this? Did it look like that? We went back and forth for like 3 months until she got it right. You know what I mean? And I was like, you know,
So
I mean, she did.
do you have a picture of it you could send us possibly? I'm just curious.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
Do you think it looks like what you saw?
Yes, I mean, if she would have did a color version of it, it probably would look closer to what I seen, you know, because it did have the red tint in the black hair, and the eyes were red, and you know, but I mean, other than that, all the features really did look like what I seen. Yeah, she did an amazing job. She's an amazing artist. Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of her stuff. She is really cool. We'd like to get her on
Yeah.
the show. Actually, we should get her on the show sometime, Brian, and talk to her a little bit. But
Okay.
so you've seen this creature, Al, a couple times now. Do you think it looks more ape-like or more human-like, or what would you? How would
Well,
you
the skunk,
describe
the
it?
skunk ape I seen definitely looked more gorilla like. It looked more like I said, it looked like King. When the first time I described it to anybody, and I wasn't allowed to tell anybody about it when we got to New York because my cousin Anthony didn't want to be ridiculed. Because in my family, the way we show love is by breaking your balls. And if we would have went back to New York and told everybody what we seen, we would have never heard the end of it. Because my brother never heard the end of it. They were always breaking my brother's chops about all the paranormal stuff that he was doing. So I didn't really tell anybody except my two closest friends. And then they knew my cousin Anthony, and I'm like, don't tell Anthony, otherwise he's gonna kick all three of our asses. But yeah, no, I mean, when I described it to those guys, I said it looked like a gorilla. I mean, it looked like Mighty Joe Young. I don't, it just looked, it was massive, and it was mad. It was not happy. I don't know if it wasn't happy because of the fires in the swamp in the Everglades. If it wasn't happy because it had to come inland to follow the animals inland to feed. But it was not a happy camper. It didn't want to be there, but I guess it had no choice because that's where the food was.
Oh, sorry. Right on, man. Well, tell us about you have a YouTube channel or do you do a podcast? I think is it a podcast that you do or tell
No,
us
I
what
don't. I don't do a podcast. I used to
okay.
do a podcast back in the day, and I gave it up because it took too much time away from my actually investigating.
Okay. I know you sent us a couple UFO videos. Tell us about that real quick.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Those UFO videos were amazing. The way they came about was my wife was going. My wife was going to close the curtains in the living room window, and I was sitting to the couch that faced west, and the couch, the part of the couch she was sitting on faced east, and she seen something like gold, like a gold star out in the sky. And she said, "Hey, hon, what's this?" And I was like, "I don't know." I went over, I looked at it, and I said, "Oh, it's probably Venus. It's always Venus." And she goes, "I don't know. It's pretty low, and it's right here." And I was like, "Well, I have." I'm a sky watcher. I have a telescope, so I have a couple apps on my phone. One is a constellation app. One is a planet app. And I went out there and I put them both. I went through all the constellations and all the planets, and I put them up against where this thing was, and nothing lined up. Now it's got my curiosity. So now I'm filming. I didn't have any of my high tech equipment with me because it was all packed into the car. Because the next day we were going out on a Bigfoot expedition, so I was just working on my phone. So I filmed it, and then when I stopped filming and I put it down and I enlarged it, it was weird. In the sky, it looked like a gold star, but on the phone, it looked like um, a germ underneath the microscope, rotating counterclockwise with all different colors. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that's what it looked like to me. And that was the first night. And then this came back a week later. And again, the second time I filmed it, I just filmed it the second time because I wanted to see if it was the same craft. And I always validated against the apps just to make sure it wasn't a planet or something. And I filmed it the second time. Actually, the second time I did like a little Morse code with a tactical flashlight, and it started to come in. And then when I picked up the camera again, it stopped and it backed off. And I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting. And then I looked at it again, and again, it looked like what I described the first time. Then the third time it came in, I filmed it again. And again, just to see if it was the same thing. Only this time I broke out my high powered binoculars that I use when I go to the range, right? Because I can't see 200 yards down the line field. I'm 62 years old. I'm too old for that shit. So I have high powered binoculars I look at, and I gave them to my wife. I said, "You tell me what you see up there, because my wife doesn't believe in any of this stuff. So she looked up and she says, "Wow, it looks like a squid with tentacles hanging down." And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? So I grabbed the binoculars from her and I looked. But when I looked, the tentacles were pointing south. They weren't pointing straight down. They were pointing south. And I was like, holy crap, this is crazy. So I broke out all I said, okay, next time it comes, I'm going to have all my high tech shit set up on tripods. I'm going to film this thing, right? Shows up a week later. I'm filming it in IR. It's there, clear as day. I'm filming it in UV. It's there, clear as day. I'm going to film it in thermal, and it's not there. Does not show up in thermal whatsoever. The one spectrum of light I would have expected it to show up in, it didn't show up. Filmed it with my cell phone, it showed up. So then I was like, wow, this is pretty wild. It doesn't show up in thermal. So then one more. Now this always came by around between 7 and 8:30 at night. It always came around. One morning I get up, I work armed guard. I get up 4 o'clock in the morning to go to work, and I'm walking out the door 4:30 in the morning, and the little voice in the back of my head says, "Look up." And I've never seen this thing in the morning before. It's always been at night. And there it is up in the sky, like it's waiting for me. And I was just waved to it. I said, yeah, I'm too tired to deal with you this morning. I got to go to work. I ain't got the head for this shit right now, you know? And as I started to walk away, the voice said, stop. This is important. Pay attention. So I stopped and I started filming with my phone. And then the little voice said to me, ask it telepathically to give you a sign if it can hear you. So I said telepathically, if you can hear me, give me a sign. And the thing flashed. It flashed me. And that was like the last video I sent you where it flashed me. And what I thought was just a flash, when I stopped to take a moment to look at it, it's not really a flash. The thing expands like 10 times its size, and then it shrinks back down. It's just, I've never experienced that on a one-to-one basis, on a telepathic communication basis. We've done CE5s, and we've brought crafts in, and we've asked them to do maneuvers for us, or we've hit them with tactical flashlights, and they would flash back at us, but never one-on-one. It was always a group thing with, like, 50 people or something. And I was so pumped up after that. My adrenaline went through the roof. I was like, I couldn't get to work to show my partner, he was like, holy crap, this is nuts, and I was like, the thing flashed me. And then it came back again one more time. It came back, and this was really weird. The last time it came back, I didn't film it. I said, oh, how many times am I going to film the same damn thing, And I said, so I'm out there looking at it, and it's just sitting in the sky. And then out of nowhere, and I'm telling you, this is out of nowhere, the UFO disappeared, and a Cessna plane came out from behind it. Now, if you know anything about Cessnas, they're like crop dusters. You can hear them a mile away coming. I did not hear this Cessna until it went past the point of where the UFO was. I don't know if the UFO disappeared and moved away, went up, went down, or if the UFO turned into the damn thing. I don't know, because at that point, I had a 1500 luma flashlight, and I was doing an SOS, okay? And I held that SOS. I held it on the UFO for like 5-10 minutes. And then when it turned into a Cessna and it flew over my house, it was going northeast, like up to Massachusetts. I kept that flashlight on that cockpit of that plane. And I said, if this is really a goddamn plane, then that guy is going to have to report this to the authorities, because I'm doing an SOS, right? So that whole night, I sat by the front door waiting for the sheriff to show up or the state police to ask me what the hell was going on. And no one showed up the whole night. So I don't know if that Cessna was the actual UFO, or if the UFO shot up in the sky. But the crazy thing was, there was no sound until it passed the point of where the UFO was sitting in the sky. And then you heard all that. We have a little local airport here. There's tons of Cessnas go by my house every day. You can hear them coming, and you can hear them going. You know, they're loud as shit. And yeah, it was just nuts. I was nuts between the UFO flashing me, hearing me telepathically, and rotating in a counterclockwise with different color lights inside it. It's just, like I said, every time we looked at it in a different spectrum of light, it would change its shape. And it wasn't something that looked like it was a plasma ship, because I sent you a still photo on Messenger, and you can see in the still photo, it kind of looks like a triangle with maybe a globe in the middle or something. You know what I mean? It doesn't look like it's a plasma ship. You know what I mean? So how is it changing shapes? It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, that is pretty cool looking. I'm looking at him right now.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man, that one, it flashed me. That blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind. Your microphone is off.
I'll probably add these to the video because people are going to want to see it once they hear this. So
Yeah,
that's all right.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. That's why I sent them to you guys.
yeah, definitely,
Absolutely.
man.
Yeah.
Al, you do not look 62.
I feel 90.
If you told me you were 47, I would totally believe you, brother.
I would believe that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I for real would.
I thought you were younger than us. I
Yeah,
was like 74. He'd have been like 3 or 4 years old.
no kidding. Right.
No, I was 12. Yeah.
Man, you definitely been through a lot of crazy stuff.
Dude, you don't know the half of it.
We're gonna have to bring you on for a second show, probably.
I've had the dog man come to my house. You know what I mean?
That's a whole other show right there.
Yeah. Like I said, the pictures I sent you of the Sasquatch nest, that I sent you the audio of the dog man. If I don't know if you guys heard that audio, when you first turn it on, you hear the tail end of the dog man the first time he goes off, and then when the coyotes they come up for the second time in the second go around, you can hear him again inside the second go around. That night, he actually, when we came down off of the high ridge and we were down on the Appalachian Trail, he came over to our side of the lake, which he never comes over to because it's the Sasquatch side of the lake, and he screamed at us. And here's the weird thing. I've been to the dog man den. He's come to my house. I got the message. I've been to your house. You've been to mine, and we'll stay away from each other's house. I got it. I haven't been there in 9 years. And that night I was going up to the sacred site with my cousin, Sean. I said, man, I wonder, the thought came across my head. I wonder if the dog man is still in the den in the swamp, if he's still there or if he moved on. No sooner did we get to the top of that high ridge, the dog man went off. And that was like, he heard my thought. Like, yeah, I'm still here. What are you doing here? You know? And then when we were leaving, he came over to our side of the lake and he screamed at us. And my cousin was behind me, and he went right through my cousin and right through me. And I turned to my cousin Sean, and he was like, dog down. My cousin Sean's a 20-year-old kid. He's only been out with me half a dozen times, 3 times squatching, 3 times ghost hunting. And he just turned to me and he was like, dog man. And I'm like, yeah, dog man. And he was like, okay. Like, nothing shakes this kid. And I turned to him and I said, Sean, I'm going to do something tonight that I've never done in my life. So I'm going to carry this 60-pound pack that I got on my back 4.5 miles to the car. And I'm not stopping for a goddamn thing, not for a water break, not for a rest. I'm not stopping till we get to the car. And he was like, do you think, he was like, yo, cuz, you think you could do it? I said, I'm going to have no choice but to do it, because I didn't want this thing flanking us, you know, because if it would have flanked us, we would have had to fight our way out. And, you know, it's only one way in and one way out on that Appalachian Trail. And he followed us out, though. He followed us out for a good distance. And then at some point, he must have turned around and went back over towards his den. But yeah, it was crazy. I mean, it was just like, was that a coincidence that thought crosses my mind? I wonder if he's still there. And then he goes off. and he comes over to our side of the lake. Now, I've been going to the sacred site for a dozen years. I haven't been back to the Dogman Den in 8 years, 8, 9 years. And I can't tell you how many times I've been to the sacred site and never thought once if that Dogman was still on the other side of the lake. And that never happened before. That night, that thought comes in my mind, and that happens. As a matter of fact, I actually freaked out a little bit when I got home, because I was like, oh man, I hope he doesn't come to the house again. You know, he's already been here twice. I don't want to really have to deal with him again at the house, you know. Crazy stuff, man.
Yeah, that's wild. You're still muted, Ty.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have to bring you back on and talk about that some more, and some other experiences that you've had.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'd like
Oh,
to
yeah,
hear
definitely got to
more
get into
about
the ghost thing some more, too.
Tell us real quick about what year was that incident where the Bigfoot in the police car? Do you remember what year that was?
1974.
Okay. Is
Yeah,
that what you said?
74.
Okay. My
Yeah,
bad.
74. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Do you think that did he file a police report? Do you know if that cop did or not?
I don't know, but I know when researched it, and she researched it through her uncle, who was on the other police. He was in the New City, not New City, Cooper City police officer. She asked him to look into it for her. You know what I mean? Because she figured, you know, and he told her that he couldn't find anything on it. So whether he was being honest with her, I don't know. But or they just didn't allow him. I mean, Davy's a big town now in Florida. You know what I mean? When I was down there, it was a tiny little cowboy town, and now it's huge, and it's, you know, there's tens of thousands of people living in there. You know, back then it was a small little community, and like I said, the dogs. I was walking the dogs one night in the woods, and they treat a cougar. And I didn't even know back then. I didn't even know Florida had cougars. You know what I mean? Until I seen one up in a tree, and I was like, "Oh crap! This thing is gonna jump down on me," you know. And I couldn't get the dogs out of there fast enough.
Yeah, those warm climates, you know what I mean? They're going to be around that area for sure.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah,
real quick before we let you out of here, and we'll get you back on again, Al, as we said. But
for sure.
do you think there's a difference between a skunk ape and your typical Bigfoot, your North Pacific, Pacific Northwest Bigfoot, or do you
I
think they're the
think
same
I
thing?
think I think they're I think like human beings, they come in all shapes and sizes. You know, I really do. Um, I don't know. I know people claim that the ones down south are smaller. Not the one I seen. He wasn't small by any shape, any stretch of the imagination. But I think, and I know they claim that the ones up here, like in the Adirondacks or out in the Pacific Northwest, because they're both. If you look at the Adirondacks from Google Earth and you look at the Pacific Northwest, it looks like a mirror image of each other. You know what I mean? We just don't get the rain they get, and they say the ones up there are much bigger. You know, the ones I've seen over the years, and I have a white one who comes to me, and his name is Alaric. He comes to me in my dreams, and he tells me stuff, or he'll show me things. But before he came to me, a female came to me, and her name was Hyanet. And then right after Hyanet came to me, Alaric came to me, and he claims to be an ancient one and a king shaman or something to that effect. And that was the reason why we were even out that night squatching, because he had come to me in a vision and told me to come up the ridge. And I had never been up the ridge. It was something I've never done. I made a deal with the squatches that live there. You stay up on the ridge. I'll stay down at the sacred site, and you come to me. But he was signaling me to go up the ridge. So when we went up the ridge that time, that was the first time up the ridge, we found all those nests and everything. And those nests were set up very strategically, almost like foxholes in the military, you know, very, very strategic. And yeah, no, I mean, otherwise I probably wouldn't have been there, because we just gone there, led the October before. So, I mean, maybe I would have been, who the hell knows, but you know, that was the reason. That was the whole reason for going that night, is because I had that telepathic communication with Alaric, you know, and he was telling me to come up the ridge, you know, like he was signaling me up, and in my dream state, I'm telling him, no, 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 I can't come up, you know, and he's like, no, you're with me, you can come up. And then when I talked to my psychic, the team psychic, she said if he's telling, because she's dealt with Alaric in Arkansas, and my friend Chris Reinhardt in Connecticut has seen him too. So all three of us have seen Alaric telepathically. And he lives in Connecticut. I'm in New York, and she's in Arkansas. So she told me if he told me to come up, then it's okay to come up. So I went up.
Well, Al, we want to thank you again for being with us tonight, man. It was awesome hearing
was
your
very
encounters
cool.
and stuff like that. Definitely
sure.
get you back on down the road and talk to you some more about your other experiences. So we appreciate it, brother.
Thank you, fellas. Thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure to be on. And as soon as we're out of here, I'll send you the photograph of the skunk ape that Sibylla did for me.
Okay,
Oh,
we
that'd be
appreciate
great.
that, man. We'll
No
put it up
problem,
when we
brother.
release this episode.
Yep.
All right, man. You take care and stay in touch. We'll talk to you soon, man.
All right, later,
All right,
brother.
Al. Take it
See
easy.
ya.
Out.